chemistry. So I have the sodium hydroxide solution. Okay, so that's labeled in one of the containers with a number on the top. So everybody's got a different number because your job is to identify, is this the high molarity solution or the low molarity sodium hydroxide. Both of them are safe to handle. If you get any on your hands, you just want to wash your hands. We've dealt with this molarity before, and it's relatively safe. Just wash your hands if you get any on, and be careful not to spill. Just wipe up any spills. Okay, but your job's to identify what the molarity is. This is my cabbage juice indicator that I've extracted. And this is just vinegar. So hopefully you guys at the pickup, if you don't have vinegar, you grabbed a tube of this. If you don't have vinegar, you might need to run to the store, or contact me if it's a really big issue and we can figure out how to get you some vinegar. But hopefully you've got it. So I'm going to take, this is my sodium hydroxide, and I'm going to take a few milliliters. So I have 15 milliliters of the sodium hydroxide in here. I've set, oh, there's Linus. I've set the other half of it into another container just so that I can do one trial. If I make a mistake, I can do a second trial. So again, start out with 15 milliliters of your sodium hydroxide. You're going to add your indicator. So here is, I think I've added, there was about 2 milliliters of indicator. Now in a basic solution, the indicator is kind of a green color. In a very basic solution, it's like a yellow color. Okay, so your job now is to neutralize it. Okay, we're going to use acetic acid, which is vinegar. But this is the important part. In a titration, you need to know the volume of sodium hydroxide you started with. You also need to know the volume of the acid that you use to neutralize it. So to neutralize it, I need to bring it to a purple color. So what I'm going to do, on my dropper, you'll see there's a mark about halfway up the tube. That's a half of a milliliter, okay? So I'm going to take a half a milliliter at a time, making sure you guys see I only have it in the neck. Get to the half a milliliter mark, and I keep track. So this is a half of a milliliter, and I get no color change. Okay, I'm going to prep another half a milliliter. So there's 1 milliliter total. Okay, I kind of swirl it. You might need to, you can't mix it with your pipette because you don't want to contaminate your pipette, but I'm definitely not purple yet. And then I'm going to keep adding additions. Now on the video, I'm doing maybe 1 milliliter at a time. You might want to stick with half a milliliter. I'll tell you, it is pretty, the color change happens relatively quickly, okay, but for speeding this up, I'm just going to go, so you can see something starting to happen. Okay, there we go. It's now, it's hard to see here. I recommend doing this on a white background. Let me move over. Might be able to see this better. It's now a light pink color. So, I'm not going to tell you how much I added, but you need to keep track of how many milliliters of vinegar it takes to reach a neutral pH. And again, you're going, this might be a little bit still not quite at the right pH, so I'm going to just take a little bit more cabbage juice just to make the color a little more intense. Might be easier to read. So I just added a couple more milliliters of that cabbage juice. So yeah, this is pretty neutral. I might have even gone past the purple point just barely. Okay, so now I've kept track of how much vinegar I used, and I should be able to perform a calculation, okay, where I can determine the concentration of either the sodium hydroxide or the vinegar. I'm going to leave instructions on how to do that calculation. I think once we determine if you have the high concentration or the low concentration sodium hydroxide, I'll be telling you the specific molarity of your solution. Okay, once you know that, the goal will be to determine what's the molarity of acetic acid in vinegar. Is it 1 molar? Is it 5 molar? Is it 0.5 molar? I want to know what's the concentration of acid in that vinegar. So question 1,
What sample do you have? Is it like concentrated or dilute sodium hydroxide?
Is there some though, some
And
that have never been used in chemicals?
yeah, some of these have had chemicals in them, huh?
Can
So
you find some that never been used in chemicals?
I will find some that have never been used for chemicals. And then after you answer that question, then the question would be in regular household vinegar, what's the concentration? What's the molarity of acetic acid? So I know this titration is not as fancy, and hopefully this week I'll get a video up where I show you the real equipment that we use to figure out concentrations and do titrations in a lab. But for now, this is it. So that's your indicator. Okay, this is your sodium hydroxide, and that's the vinegar. And we're trying to figure out what this solution is. Is it high or low concentration? And you're going to compare it to your classmates. After you're done with this, you can dump this down the drain, and you will remember you have an additional 15 milliliters. I put mine in a little container here, but you probably would just put it in a glass off to the side. And then if you want to do 2 trials, you can do 2 trials. Okay, but you will upload your result. I'm going to make a master spreadsheet. You'll upload how many milliliters of vinegar it took to neutralize that base.